Welcome. This is We'll Do It Live Enterprise Content Staging with Drupal and Workspaces. So I'm Devin Zuczek. I'm a software architect at Purple Innovation. If that sounds familiar, it's actually the maker of the Purple mattress. So their site is Drupal. Thanks to them for letting me come up here and present. I work on a lot of different things as an architect, but I've been in a Drupal development role for like 15 years now. So drank the Drupal Kool-Aid, never looked back. I'm from just outside of Philadelphia. I made a lot of trips up to Boston because I was chasing this girl who later became my wife, so happy to be back. Yeah, that was 15 years ago. So we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about the before times of content staging, the future with Workspaces. We're going to talk about how it works kind of behind the scenes, and then I'm going to go beyond core, show you what's in the contributor ecosystem, and then we're going to look at some experimentation. So, as always, I start with the problem. You've probably seen this situation before. I've seen it too many times over the years. Customer or your client says, I want to see how these images will look on 42 pages or something like that. Maybe it's not 42 pages, but it's a whole bunch of changes. So, at least with the team that I support, like it's happened all the time, multiple times. You log into the stage site. The stage site's out of date. You have to re-author all these pages to show it. Or, let's just copy production down to stage. That's easy enough. But it's really not. You run into a DevOps issue. GitHub is broken. The database doesn't transfer correctly because you're trying to pull production down to stage or something like that. Everything works until it doesn't, of course. Then you got to fix your config issue. I don't know. Your code on stage doesn't mesh well, and now the stage side is down. I've seen this everywhere. I've seen this on Pantheon. I've seen this on Acquia, Kubernetes, AWS. Doesn't matter whatever platform you use. You'll run into something like this. So you can't author those pages you're looking for, and you're delayed with the person that's making the request. So then, of course, you have to field all the questions like, is the stage site down? Did someone delete my page on stage? We were running a demo there. Can someone fix that quick? Stage isn't responding. Stage active. These are just quotes that I just copied and pasted from our team's channel. So, and then I was working on that. So that's the other issue that with the traditional stage side is that people treat it as some pristine copy that can never be touched. When in reality, it's often needed to experiment with other changes like code changes or new features or things like that. So finally, okay, we make the change on stage. Looks good. Looks very pretty. We get approval for it. Someone says, okay, that's great. Let's make the change on production now. We're going to replay the change that we made on stage onto production. And we mess it up because we changed the order of the buttons. I don't know, the crop messed up or the image quality is bad. Who knows? Now it looks different. And let's pretend this isn't the only change you had to make. Remember, we were making 40 or 50 changes at a time. You just wasted your own time, or your team wasted their time because they had to redo something that they already did on stage. They have to redo it on production, and then probably even more than that because they redid it and then messed it up, and then they spent more time trying to fix it. That's not fun. So to summarize the problem we're trying to solve, site builders are scared of touching production. It decreases trust in the system because they can't really safely experiment with changes before going live. They have to make the change in sometimes two or more places. So if you have a stage or a QA environment, someone's always creating the content there so they can get approvals or whatnot. And on live, there's no way to easily preview, let's say, batches of changes as a whole on production. And environments are expensive, depending on where you host, especially if you're maintaining it yourself. Servers, databases, files, AWS, all that stuff. It does add up. So what's the solution? I think it's enterprise content staging. What does it mean? It's kind of hard to describe, but I like to go with narrowing it down to creation and governance. And I think Drupal's really good at content creation. We all know that. I don't need to go into that. But it doesn't quite have all the tools you need for effective content governance. And that's not just, staging content, but it's making that staged content accessible, reviewable, able to be moderated, and also approved on a site-wide scale. And so that is, shipping something to a reviewer, like a legal team or design or something, having them sign off on it, and then just clicking a button and it's live. You just activate whatever changes you had. So first things first, I'll talk about pending revisions. If you used Drupal before, you're probably familiar. I just want to mention because it's critical to understanding how this all works together. And it really just means a newer version of content that is not yet published on the site. So that's pretty simple. If you used content moderation before, the module that's in core, this is pretty much exactly what that does. It allows you to create content workflows so that changes to content result in new revisions, which are then later published once their state is changed to publish. But what if you have 10 pages that you want to change at once, or 100? And maybe there's also blocks, and there's also menu links, and there's also taxonomy terms. Enter Workspaces for this. So it's a core module. It was experimental for a long time, but as of Drupal 10.3, it's stable. Everything I'll talk about here is going to be 10.3 or beyond, so 10.3 or 11. So once you enable this module, it will create a workspace called Stage by default, and you could equate this to an actual physical separate staging environment. And this is something that many enterprise content systems out there already have, like Experience Manager or Contentful, Sitecore, HubSpot. They all do something similar to this, and this brings Drupal into that arena as a competitor. So just like content moderation, Workspaces utilizes this pending revisioning system, but it's going to track basically a group of revisions so that that group can then be converted to default revisions and then published to production. So I know you're probably enabling this on a laptop right now, but to save time, because we don't have a lot, I'm just going to show you some screenshots of the out-of-the-box functionality. So out of the box, we enable the module. It adds a little selector to the top of the administration menu, and it tells you what workspace you're in. So on the top, we're in the live workspace, so any change we made is immediately visible. If you click that and you change the stage, then any change you make there won't be visible. It'll be hidden until you publish it. And Stage is just there by default out of the box, but you can create as many as you want. So we saw that Workspaces didn't require any configuration. You just turn it on. If you use like custom blocks or menu items, you can also stage those. So for my little demo here, like the top left is a little block I added. There's a page, there's some content, and there's menu links. So let's pretend that I switched to the Stage workspace and I made those changes. And when you go to publish this workspace, and remember the changes in Stage are not visible, only to you in the workspace. The publish UI will then tell you, hey, you've made these changes in Stage. And then when you go to publish them, it will convert all of those things to production. And so that's really how it works. That's about it, but how does it work under the hood? I think it's useful to know how it works under the hood so you can kind of assist your team when the questions come up, like what happens if I do this on production? Because there's still a little learning curve there. But the basics are pretty simple. Remember back to forward revisioning. That's built into Drupal. The latest revision is not the published one, and the published revision shows on live. So Workspaces is really just taking these pending revisions and creating a table of their relationship to the workspace. And so now that we have that list, we can act upon them. So Drupal added this hook called hook entity preload, and this is kind of how it works behind the scenes, where when you request a page to either view or edit, it just gives you a different one. So it'll pull from a different revision. It'll detect what workspace you're in and then deliver you the revision that's associated with that workspace. And Workspaces is safe too. So another nice feature is that when you're editing a workspace, you can't accidentally make changes to the live site. So if that little icon says Stage and you try to edit something that maybe is not supported by Workspace, like a global site configuration or something, you'll get the error that says you can't do that in this workspace. So it's safe. I think it builds trust in the system because then site builders will know for sure that their change is not going to go to live. So let's go beyond core. I'm going to look at some contributed modules, some patches, some things that aren't quite stable yet, but I think they're really cool and really useful. Venture into the ecosystem of Workspaces. What is the community up to? So there's this contributed module called Workspaces Extra, and it does a lot of cool things. There's a lot of experimental submodules, but I'm going to talk about these changes here. It provides an open-close status for Workspaces. It allows you to roll back a published change. So for example, in my demo, when I published those changes, you could just as easily go back in and just roll them all back and it'll revert the entire site. You can move or discard changes. So if there was a change I made that I no longer wanted, I could just get rid of that revision from within that workspace. Or if I said I didn't want that change to be in that workspace, but I was going to use it later, then I could create a new workspace and then move that change to the other workspace. And it also provides some UI improvements as well. just quality of life changes. And there's two submodules I'm going to talk about, which are just scheduler and preview. So scheduler, it's pretty simple. You can also schedule your publications. So as long as cron is running on your site, you just set it and forget it. Pick a date, maybe there's a promo launch or something, you just plug that in and then it'll publish it for you on schedule. Previews, remember this, because it's going to come up later. You can generate a preview link for Workspaces, so you can send it to an anonymous user and have them preview all the changes that are pending going to live. You can set a redirect URL, so maybe you wanted to make sure that the person getting it, like the reviewer, they end up on a certain page after they click the link. And to use the link, you don't have to be logged in. So this is perfect for staging the entire site, sending it off to outside your team or outside your organization for some sort of review. And I want to mention that because it's good to know for some other things coming up. It uses Workspace negotiators, which is really simple. The request comes in, and then Drupal looks at something and then figures out what workspace it is. So previews, for example, just looks at a cookie and says, oh, this cookie is associated with the stage workspace, and then it delivers you different content. And bear with me, harsh transition into moderation within Workspaces. So I've also seen this a dozen times, where you have some third-party vendor who wants to make a bunch of changes to your site. Maybe it's an SEO team or like a, blogger or content, something like that. They say, we need to make a dozen changes to our site. We have this vendor, they're really good at the internet, and can you give them access to production? And they've sent you like a zip file of HTML files to upload to the site, and you're like, no, absolutely not. In the before times, you would say, okay, we'll make all the changes on stage first, and then we'll approve them, and then we'll push them to production, and you end up with that whole, that big problem that I talked about in the beginning. So maybe, with Drupal, you could set up an authoring account on production, configure the roles, make sure they can only create unpublished content, but it's a lot of work, it's not really standard. So the really easy solution for this is provided by core module itself. So we can create a new user. We assign them this permission, which is bypass content entity access in own workspace, create a new workspace, we assign them as the owner of that workspace, and then we let them wreak havoc in their own space, and they can't touch production. Because if they try to touch anything that is production, they'll get that error, like, you can't do that. So pretend I'm like the vendor. You can see that there's actually no edit link on this page, but then we activate the vendor workspace, and now we have edit links. So there you go. You just locked your vendor into a space that they can do whatever they want, and they can't touch production. But you might want stricter controls over this. So in talking about governance, we can add moderation on top of this, even within their workspace. Yes, with content moderation. We can use content moderation, but we're not using it to moderate the workspace. We're using it to moderate the items within the workspace. So every item in the workspace is moderated, and the workspace can't be published until all moderated content is approved. And so just an example here, if you tried to publish that stage workspace, then it would tell you, you can't publish it because it contains items in moderation. You can still set up moderation workflows to your heart's content, but now they're site-wide. It ensures that everything has to be reviewed before publishing that whole entire change as a batch operation. I think that's really cool. And if you want to go even further, because you don't want authors to release their own work, there's another contributed module, Workspaces Approval, and basically we just apply moderation to the workflow itself. And so you would have to set up who you need to review the workspace in order to publish it. And so you can get really strict with your governance here if you want to go all the way there. And the difference here is that instead of like the old content moderation method, you're approving a whole entire batch of content instead of a single item one at a time. So, all right, who's ready for a brain melt? So Drupal core restricts you to one item per workspace right now. That's a core restriction. So it means that a content item can only have a change in one workspace. If you try to edit it in a different workspace, or let's say you have a piece of content in Stage, you cannot edit it in Live, the same one. You'll get an error. This is for good reason. It's a bit confusing. But it's possible that this is fine with what you want to do. If you're only creating content in Stage and then pushing that up, and then creating content in Stage and then pushing that up, that's fine. But you might have a different case where you need different versions of the page in different staged areas. So let's go ahead and complicate things even further by introducing Workspaces Parallel. We modify some core constraints and do little hacky things to achieve what I think is impossible. So Workspaces will track everything the same way. It's just now that we have two instances of the latest revision, because depending on what workspace you're in, you're going to have a different version that is latest. So if you're in Workspace A, you view a piece of content, you get that one. You get that version of that content. If you're in Workspace B, then you get a different version of that content. And same thing, if you're in Live, then you get a revision that is not associated with any of the other workspaces. And any change you make there will be live. It makes the revisions page, if you worked with it in Drupal, very confusing because you have all these different revisions and it's not really linear. And I thought there must be a better way to explain this. So when you publish, for example, Workspace B, all it does is take those revisions and then push them up to live. But you'll see that your Workspace A revisions are still there, and they can be published at a later time as well. And why would you do this? Practically, like if you have something like this where you do have some sort of promotion that you're working on and you have to publish that one, but there's also this like long-lived sale promotion that's also going on, then that's how this would work. And remember, like, it looks like Git, right? It's very similar to Git. There's one difference is that when you publish, like, there's no such thing as reintegration. Like, you're not going to merge your code with somebody else's. It's like whatever's last is like the winner. So I found this contributed module called Revision Graph, which is pretty cool. It was designed to show you like how, I guess, like out of date your languages were. So if you had a multilingual site, it would show you how far behind your other languages were. But I thought, oh, that'd be awesome if I could just plug Workspaces into there and then it would tell me what content was in different Workspaces. And so I published that like last week. So Purple gave me some time to make this. So that's now part of the Workspaces parallel, which will hopefully make it easier to understand. This is a real life screenshot of what we have at Purple. So it does get confusing. As you can tell, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 copies of this item in parallel versions of the site. All right, and we're going to wrap it up with experience testing. Now that we know about Workspaces, previews, I was thinking, what else could we do with this? And so, we all know we're being tested. Everyone does A/B testing, especially retail. There's a test running to gauge efficacy in you interacting with something. So before we move forward with this, you'll need some tool to measure, if someone clicks on something or if someone buys something. You can do it with Google Analytics. You can do it with Optimizer, stuff like that. I can't really tell you much about our internal operations, but if you move a button, you measure clicks. You kind of see which front page will hold people the longest, or maybe which workspace has the least clicks on support. So they're not looking for help. But how can we do that in Drupal? So remember these preview links? They're activated by cookies. But instead of sending someone a link to say, all right, click this to preview the site, we can just set 50% of users to have a cookie set on the request, and that's going to serve up a different version of the site entirely. So it could be as simple as this. Like, with this little piece of code, we can drop what the current workspace is onto the page, and then if you can pull that with Google Analytics or something, then you essentially have an A/B test, because then you can take your analytics and segment them by workspace, the one that you delivered. So let's go even further. Product experimentation. This is very experimental. I think there's one person in this room who has tried it, besides us. So in retail, it's pretty common to test if a higher price will still sell at the same level as a lower price. Everyone does this. It's usually with external tools, but now we could do it in Drupal. All right, so on the left is the control. On the right is going to be our treatment. So you can see I go through all the attributes. This is like a t-shirt product. This is Drupal Commerce. It's a module that just provides a shopping cart and all that stuff. In the test, I'm going to activate this preview link. And now when I access this product, it's giving me different prices. This is the same product. It's just different revisions on the variations of the products where I change the price. And you could change anything. You could change the title. You could change the colors. I don't know, whatever you wanted to do. They're just versions of the product variation. And so you'll see the prices, it's carrying through all the way to the cart, because Drupal Commerce doesn't even know that this is happening, because we're just swapping out the product with a different one, with a different version of it. Yes?
Sorry, just a quick question for this one. Does this two A and B has the same URL?
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
It is the same URL, because Drupal's seeing product 1, but that's showing you revision 6 or 5 or 4 or 3 or 2. So it is the same URL. You don't know that it's different. Yeah. It's being swapped out on the back end. So how did that work? So here's the product variations in Commerce. I'm in the stage workspace where I changed the price, and the control still has the regular ones. And so if this stage workspace somehow wins, and we say oh yeah, people are definitely willing to pay more money, then we just publish that stage workspace. And then you start the process again. So a couple catches, Commerce Workspaces. I made the sandbox module to accomplish what I just did. It modifies Commerce in a way to just massage some things into making it work. It does require a patch to allow revisioning in Commerce because Commerce right now does not support product revisioning, which is required for Workspaces to work. But there is a patch that is pretty active. It just hasn't been merged into Commerce Core yet. Yeah, so if you enable that patch and you enable my module, that should really work out of the box. Please let me know if you demo it. So what did we learn? We got to update all 42 pages on this site, do it live in a workspace, make the changes, send the preview off somewhere, get your approvals if you have to, and then publish it. No stage site involved. I got a lot of feedback from internally our site builder team that I kind of support. So this is unbiased feedback. I'm not going to go through it, but if you want to go back and read the slides, that's cool. And then all the resources that I talked about are also here. So all the submodules and the patches and anything like that. And that is it. Thank you very much. I think I'm at time, but if there's any quick questions. Yeah. Yes.
So just quick question. So we are also enterprise side. For us, for you guys, do you guys match like the Cloudflare or the third party for the staging environment? Because our requirement is like we need to match, kind of connect all those third party to test their scripts as well. Not crash our side. So is that Workspace can benefit on that?
Could you say that again? Yeah.
I mean, like our right now our staging setup is like to match production connect with all those like GTM scripts, third party vendor, Cloudflare, workers, everything. And it's same with stage environment. So, but if we set up like this workspace, where this one can benefit that. The thing is can be like real life, just like production, with all those connections to Cloudflare workers, to everything.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a production site. It's the same production site. Drupal is only like giving you a different version of the content that you're requesting.
Yeah, that's what I saw as well, yeah.
Yeah. If you want to, or message me on Slack and I can like look into that further and give you a better answer probably. Yeah.
And that optimize like A/B testing part also.
Yeah, so you can
benefit as well.
Yeah, so like if you use Optimizely, you would use Optimizely to basically set that like preview cookie, and then set that for like half of the users, and then so Drupal will deliver different content based on that cookie, and then you can measure the output in Optimizely if you wanted to do that. Yeah. Pretty cool. Anybody else? Cool. Well, thank you so much. If you want to get in touch, there's a Workspaces channel on Slack too. So that one there. We're always hanging around there and talking about cool workspace things. So yeah, thanks very much.